Okay, we've all been there, right? You're completely exhausted, but you're still scrolling on your phone. Today, we're going to dive into a story about how one simple decision, just putting the phone down, led to this absolutely life-changing transformation. Let's get into it.
Be honest. How many times have you said this to yourself? You're tucked in bed, you know you should be sleeping, but your phone's right there and you're just like, okay, just a few more minutes of scrolling. It's such a common habit, but have you ever stopped to think about the real cost?
Well, for the person in our story, we'll call her Neha, this was her nightly ritual. Those 5 more minutes always stretched into an hour, sometimes even longer. She'd just get lost in this endless feed of videos and messages, stuff that, in the grand scheme of things, didn't really matter at all.
And here you can see the direct fallout. That bright screen, the late-night scrolling, it wasn't harmless. It led directly to those heavy eyes, a pounding head, and just a generally irritable, grumpy mood the next morning. It was a really simple but really damaging equation.
And that feeling? Oh, it didn't stay at home. Nope, it followed her right into the office, where her performance took a nosedive. She couldn't focus, even simple tasks felt like climbing a mountain, and her patience was just gone. She'd snap at colleagues and was basically living in this constant state of low-key stress.
So this went way beyond just being physically tired. After weeks of this cycle, she was emotionally and mentally just wiped out. It was this deep, heavy feeling of being completely worn out, anxious, and pretty unhappy.
But then, something had to give. And this brings us to the pivotal moment in her story, the real turning point where everything, and I mean everything, started to change.
One evening, she just finally sat with herself and asked this one brutally honest question. It's the kind of question that cuts through all the excuses, It forces you to actually confront what's going on. Why did she feel so bad, so consistently?
And the answer that came back was almost shockingly simple. It wasn't some huge, complex medical issue. It wasn't some deep-seated problem from her past. It was her sleep. Her constant state of exhaustion was a direct result of her own nightly habits.
So with this realization came a decision. She decided she was going to reclaim her nights, and she started with a completely new routine.
Now, she didn't do anything crazy. The steps were actually small, but they were so powerful. A fixed bedtime, to get her body's internal clock back on track. Physically moving the phone away from the bed. This is a key part of breaking a habit, removing the temptation. Turning off notifications to get rid of the interruptions, and then replacing that mindless scrolling with just some intentional breathing to calm her mind. And of course, it wasn't easy. That's the thing about breaking a habit, right? The first few nights were a real struggle. Her brain was practically screaming for that little dopamine hit from the phone. She felt bored, restless, even agitated. But she stuck with it.
And the payoff was so clear. Progress wasn't instant, but it was steady. After just a few days, she realized she was falling asleep faster. After a week, that heavy feeling in the morning started to lift. And then, after 2 weeks, the real transformation began to kick in.
So this wasn't just about feeling less tired. The change created this massive ripple effect that honestly touched every single part of her life.
First, it was the mental fog. It just lifted. Her mind, which had been so scattered, became sharp and clear.
Then, her emotional state shifted. That constant irritability, it was replaced by this sense of just being settled and calm.
And finally, this new clarity started showing up in her interactions with other people. She was no longer distracted. She was fully present in her conversations.
The results were, a total transformation. Her mood, her focus, her productivity at work, it all came flooding back. But it was more than that. She listened better. She smiled more. And for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt truly in control of her own emotions. It was like she had become a whole new person.
So what is the ultimate lesson here? It's a really simple but profound truth about the role that rest actually plays in our lives. 1. Think about that. She didn't have to overhaul her entire life. She changed just one habit, her relationship with rest, and that single change altered everything else for the better.
And this is why. Sleep isn't a luxury. It's a non-negotiable biological necessity. It's like the brain's cleaning crew comes in at night. It clears out toxins, it lowers stress hormones like cortisol, it locks in your memories from the day, and it fundamentally protects your long-term mental health.
And that leaves us with this final thought. It is so easy to think of rest as just the absence of productivity, right? But the real story is that rest is what makes everything else possible. It doesn't waste time, it heals the mind. So my question for you is, what one small habit could you change tonight to begin healing yours?